Hey, welcome to Gaynerd Pun. It's me, Eric. I'm very excited because Uncanny X-Men 600 finally came out 3 months late, but we'll take it. Anyway, I have notes. Fair warning, I am going to be talking in detail about Uncanny X-Men number 600 as well as All New X-Men numbers 40 and 41. So if you haven't read those and you're trying to avoid spoilers, this is probably not the video for you. Okay, so first, a little bit of backstory. In 2012, All New X-Men started by Brian Michael Bendis, and basically Beast saw how shitty everything was in the present day and got the bright idea to use the powers of time travel to bring the original 5 X-Men into the present day in order to show them what a mess they made, or how dead they were in some cases, in hopes that they would go back to their original time stream and change it. But not everything always goes as planned. And so the original 5 X-Men are like, we're not going back to that crap when there's so much stuff that needs to be done here right now. So that is where we are. So, flash forward to issue number 40 of All New X-Men, in which the young Jean Grey confronts a young Bobby Drake. Bobby was catcalling his professor, the female Professor Magic, and Jean basically takes the opportunity to be like, I can read minds, bitch. So she confronts him, and even though she's a little invasive about it, and she didn't need to be, she's ultimately coming from a good place as a concerned friend, and has the decency to pull him aside and really just talk about it. Now, she doesn't really give him the chance to come out. She basically just flat out tells him, you're gay. And after some back and forth denial, he eventually admits it, and they hug, and it's weird and funny and cute and sweet. But it does bring up the question of why isn't his older self out? And unfortunately, they dropped a ball a little bit, and they didn't pick up that conversation until a couple months later in Uncanny X-Men number 600. However, it was a really great issue. So in this really fascinating and endearing scene, young Bobby confronts older Bobby, and it's not to accuse him, it's not to out him, it's not even to question him. Basically, young Bobby is just giving his older self the heads up that, hey, I'm just gonna live my life the way I want to live it, and you can do whatever you want, but I'm going to live openly and honestly. And that's really hard for older Bobby to hear, because now he has to confront his own sexual identity, which he's been repressing for decades. And so then we see older Bobby confronting the idea that his younger self is more emotionally evolved than he is. But it's not really that younger Bobby is more emotionally evolved, he was just given a better opportunity. But let's take a minute to think about it. I mean, imagine that you're a young gay mutant growing up in the 1960s, which is a homophobic time, and in the realm of the X-Men, mutant-phobic as well. So if you had 2 counts of oppression on you, and all of a sudden were given an opportunity to time travel into the future, specifically into a future that is accepting of both your sexual identity and your mutant nature, I mean, it's kind of amazing. You know, young Bobby didn't live through years of oppression and experience hatred based on his sexual identity or being a mutant, at least not nearly as much as older Bobby did. Older Bobby lived through decades of that, so it's understandable. And then older Bobby sort of ponders on the idea of what if he put just a fraction of what he put into being an X-Man into his well-being and being a whole happy person. And it was a really beautiful moment, handled really well. And then my favorite moment is when young and older Bobby bond over the fact that Angel is so hot. So there have been some vague hints over the years, like the fact that he has numerous failed relationships with every woman he's ever dated, plus he's also dated a few shapeshifters who at one point or another presented as a man. But as the years went on, these examples started to get a little more concrete, like in the 90s during Uncanny X-Men when Bobby invites Rogue to meet his parents. Not to mention the fact that there's no possible threat of touching because Rogue can't touch you. And as we start to see it through Rogue's eyes, his father is incredibly bigoted against mutants and all kinds of different minority groups. So it's not surprising that Bobby feels insecure and is maybe hiding something. Basically, Rogue was his beard. Okay. And then there was the time that North Star confessed his feelings for Bobby, and Bobby did not reciprocate those feelings. In fact, we hear North Star coming to terms with the fact that it'll never happen, and we see that Bobby is potentially listening to him saying this, and Bobby is crying alone, which is really sad and kind of shocking to see it. So this didn't feel like just an out of left field retconning of a character just to try to stay current with the times. This was actually a really beautifully handled retconning of a character in a way that is inclusive and really speaks truthfully to the coming out experience. Sadly, Brian Michael Bendis' run came to an end, and then Marvel relaunched everything with their all-new, all-different Marvel titles. Thus far, we've only really seen adult Iceman show up in Extraordinary X-Men issues 1 and 2, and neither of which have addressed his identity in any way, shape, or form. Granted, they're dealing with a lot of stuff right now, like the Terrigen mists threatening all mutant kind. No new mutants, so Fox can't get the film rights to the characters. So hopefully we'll get a chance to explore more of Bobby's identity in the upcoming relaunch of All New X-Men #1, which is starting in December. So fingers crossed, because those are the moments that I love the most about X-Men. You know, all the battle sequences are super fun, but they just are kind of hollow without those intimate moments about the characters. Plus he's Relicia. So what are your guys' thoughts on Bobby Drake? And also retconning in general, what do you feel about retconning a character's sexual identity? Personally, I think it just comes down to how it's handled by the writers. I think this was handled beautifully, and it speaks really truthfully to Bobby's history as well as the experience of a queer person coming out. Especially dealing with the fact that some people really do live in denial and come out later in life. I was lucky to come out early and have a positive experience, but not everybody has that. And it's really great to see that being represented in comics as well. Go Bobby! And if you haven't read any of this, I encourage you to check out your local comic shop or even the Comixology app and download some of these issues. There's All New X-Men numbers 40 and 41, plus Uncanny X-Men number 600. Those are the issues that I talked about today, and I would love to hear what you think about it. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoy your comics, and keep on loving Bobby Drake.